Today, guys, we have an interesting what if. What if Reika Aoki Aka Cure Beauty became Cure Berry and Fresh Pretty Cure? Let's find out. The story would change quite a bit because Reika has a very different personality. While Mickey is confident, stylish, and somewhat competitive, Reika is calm, disciplined, and highly analytical. The overall plot would still move toward forming a trio of cures, but the group's dynamic would be very different. Episode 2. Meeting Reika. Instead of Love Mamazono meeting the fashionable Mickey at a dance audition, she could meet Reika Aoki, a transfer student or a respected student known for her intelligence, traditional values, and sense of responsibility. Love would initially find Reika intimidating because she seems so composed and mature. For example, Love enthusiastically introduces herself. Reika politely bows and introduces herself with perfect manners. Love accidentally trips while trying to make conversation. Reika calmly helps her up, saying, "Please be careful." This immediately creates a big sister, little sister dynamic. Ease's attack. When Naquank appears and creates a monster, Reika would not panic. Instead, she'd quickly move civilians to safety. Observe the monster. Try to understand how it fights before attacking. Love, on the other hand, would charge in emotionally. Their contrasting approaches would actually complement each other. Becoming Cure Berry. Instead of hesitating because she doesn't believe in herself like Mickey briefly did, Reika hesitates for another reason. She would ask, "If I accept this power, I must devote myself to protecting everyone." Tart and Love assure her that this is exactly what being a pretty cure means. She transforms Cure Berry's personality. Her version of Cure Berry would feel almost like a fusion of berry and beauty. Instead of striking glamorous poses, she'd stand calmly and confidently. Rather than saying, "Blue's fresh power, Cure Berry," she might deliver it with quiet dignity rather than flashy confidence. Her fighting style changes dramatically. Instead of graceful dancing, flashy kicks, acrobatics, she would use precise martial arts, defensive counters, calculated timing, elegant but efficient movements. The blue attacks would look more controlled than stylish. Love's reaction. Love would admire Reika immediately. She'd think, "She's amazing, she's so calm." But she'd also worry that Reika is difficult to get close to. Over time, Love would slowly bring out Rieka's warmer side. Tart's opinion. Tart would be relieved. He'd quickly notice. She's got her head screwed on straight. This one thinks before she acts. He'd appreciate having someone who can balance Love's impulsiveness. Ease's opinion. Ease would find Reika much harder to manipulate. She enjoys provoking emotional reactions. Love reacts emotionally. Reika doesn't. An exchange might go like this. "Ease, you cannot save everyone." Reika, "Perhaps not, but that does not excuse doing nothing." That calm conviction would frustrate Ease because psychological attacks would have less effect. Team dynamic. Instead of Love equals energetic heart, Mickey equals confidence, Inori equals kindness, it becomes Love equals optimism, Reika equals wisdom and strategy, Inori equals compassion. The team would feel more balanced and tactical. Battle outcome. Against the first monster, Love rushes in. Reika studies its attack pattern. She identifies its weak point. Love creates an opening. Berry finishes the fight with a perfectly timed attack. Rather than winning through enthusiasm alone, the victory comes from teamwork and planning. Long-term effects. Having Reika as Cure Berry from episode 2 would influence the series in several ways. The team matures earlier. Rieka's composed leadership helps Love and Inori become more disciplined. Ease faces a different challenge. Rieka's calm, unwavering sense of duty makes emotional manipulation less effective, forcing Ys to rethink her tactics. Love still remains the emotional center. Reika wouldn't try to lead in place of love. Instead, she'd quietly support her, offering guidance when needed. Combat becomes more strategic. Reika would encourage coordinated plans instead of relying mainly on improvisation. Overall, Episode 2 would shift from introducing a stylish, confident partner to introducing a calm and honorable guardian. Rieka's presence would give the early, fresh, pretty Cure team a more thoughtful and tactical atmosphere, while still allowing Love's warmth and optimism to remain the heart of the story. Now we've gone over what would happen if Reika Aoki was Cure Berry in Episode 2 now. We have more questions to answer. Could she master the berry sword? The biggest reason is Rieka's background and personality. While Miki excels through athleticism, confidence, and adaptability, Reika is disciplined, patient, and has experience with traditional Japanese martial arts such as Kyudo, archery, and other forms of structured training in Smile Pretty Cure. Even though the berry sword isn't identical to a katana, Reika would naturally approach it as a weapon that requires precision and technique. Learning the berry sword. When Tart introduces the berry sword, Rieka's first instinct wouldn't be to rush into battle. Instead, she'd likely practice basic stances repeatedly, learn how the sword balances in her hands, focus on precise footwork, develop clean, efficient swings before attempting advanced techniques. Love might become impatient watching Reika practice so methodically. Love, you've been practicing that same move for an hour. Reika, a technique practiced correctly 1,000 times is more reliable than 100 different techniques practiced once. Fighting style. Rieka's use of the berry sword would be very different from Miki's. Miki tends to fight with speed and flair. Quick slashes, acrobatics, flashy movements, athletic combinations. Reika would fight with calm, economical movements, precise timing, defensive parries, counterattacks that punish an opponent's mistakes, minimal wasted motion. She would wait for the perfect opening instead of constantly attacking. Ys's perspective. Ys would notice the difference almost immediately. Instead of trying to overwhelm Barry with relentless attacks, she'd realize Reika is reading every move. A battle might go like this. Ys, why won't you attack? Reika, because impatience creates openings. Ys strikes. Reika blocks with the berry sword, redirects the blow, and lands a single decisive counterattack. That measured style would make Reika difficult to surprise. Special attacks. Reika would almost certainly master Berry Blade and any sword-based finishers quickly. Beyond that, she might even develop original techniques, such as Berry Crescent, a wide crescent-shaped energy slash. Berry Reflection, a defensive technique that redirects an enemy's attack before countering. Berry Frost Edge, by combining Berry's blue energy with Rieka's affinity for ice-themed powers from her original Cure Beauty form, she could create an attack that briefly slows or freezes an opponent before striking. This would be a crossover-inspired ability rather than something from Fresh Pretty Cure. Canon. Team reactions. Love, Reika, you're amazing with that sword. Inari, her movements are so graceful. Tart, she's using it like she's trained with it for years. Overall, Reika would likely become the most technically skilled berry sword user in the series. While Miki would still have advantages in improvisation and athletic flair, Rieka's discipline, composure, and dedication to mastering her weapon would allow her to wield the berry sword with exceptional precision, making it one of the team's most reliable assets in battle. Now let's go over the changes in the Cure Passion arc. Before Ys begins to doubt Labyrinth. Unlike Miki, Reika would recognize something unusual about Ys much earlier. After several battles, she would notice that Ys hesitates before harming civilians, rarely attacks out of cruelty, instead carrying out orders, shows frustration rather than enjoyment when defeated. Reika might quietly tell Love, "There is conflict within her. I do not believe she truly wishes to fight." Love would be surprised. "Really? She always looks so scary." Appearances can conceal a troubled heart. This would plant the idea of saving Ise earlier in the arc. During their battles, Reika would fight Ise very differently. Instead of trying to overpower her, she would carefully observe Ise's techniques and emotions. She would only strike when necessary and avoid attacks meant simply to humiliate or defeat her. A typical exchange might be, "Ise, why do you keep holding back?" "Reika, because I am fighting your actions, not your heart." That kind of response would frustrate Ise, who expects hatred or anger from her enemies. Love's influence changes. In the original series, Love's compassion is the main force pulling Ise toward redemption. With Reika present, the dynamic becomes, Love reaches Ise emotionally. Reika reaches Ise intellectually and morally. Reika would never pressure Ise to change. Instead, she would calmly ask questions that Ise can't easily answer. For example, if your mission truly gives your life meaning, why do you look so unhappy after every victory? Ise might dismiss the question, but it would stay with her. When Ise begins to collapse, as Ise's body starts failing because of Labyrinth's punishment, Reika would immediately understand the seriousness of the situation. She would say, "This is no ordinary illness. Someone is sacrificing her life." Unlike some of the others, she wouldn't waste time wondering whether Ise deserves help. She would focus on saving a life first, leaving judgment for later. The team's reactions. The team's roles become more defined. Love insists that Ise can become a friend. Reika argues that every person deserves the chance to choose their own future. Inori worries about Ise's health and wants to help medically. This combination creates a united front, emotional, ethical, and compassionate. Ise's redemption. When Ise finally rejects Mobius and Labyrinth, Reika wouldn't celebrate loudly. Instead, after Ise becomes Cure Passion, she might quietly bow her head and say, "Welcome. The path ahead will not erase your past, but you need not walk it alone." For someone burdened by guilt, those words could mean a great deal. Cure Passion joins the team. Reika would probably be the first to treat Setsuna as an equal, rather than as someone who has to earn back trust. She understands that redemption comes through present choices, not endless punishment. She might even become Setsuna's mentor in adjusting to life outside Labyrinth, teaching her etiquette and everyday customs, helping her study, encouraging quiet reflection instead of dwelling on guilt. Their personalities are surprisingly compatible. Both are reserved. Both take responsibility seriously. Both value honor and self-improvement. Impact on the final battle. By the end of the Cure Passion arc, the team would be noticeably more coordinated. Rieka's tactical thinking would improve the group's teamwork, while Setsuna's first-hand knowledge of Labyrinth would complement Rieka's strategic planning. The final confrontations against Labyrinth's generals would likely feature better defensive coordination, more deliberate battle plans, fewer impulsive mistakes. Overall, Reika wouldn't replace love as the emotional heart of the Cure Passion arc. Instead, she would strengthen it by adding a second perspective. Love would show Ise why life and friendship are worth protecting, while Reika would show her that people are not forever defined by the roles they were assigned. As a result, Setsuna's transformation into Cure Passion would feel less like a sudden rescue born solely from love's kindness, and more like the culmination of two complementary influences: love's unconditional compassion and Rieka's quiet faith that people can choose a better path, even after making grave mistakes. Now, how would the final arc play out? Let's find out. Before the invasion of Labyrinth. As soon as the team learns the truth about Mobius and Labyrinth, Reika would immediately begin planning rather than rushing into battle. She would divide responsibilities. Love, Cure Peach, Keep everyone's spirits high and inspire the team. Reika, cure Barry. Analyze Labyrinth's defenses and coordinate tactics. Inori, cure Pine. Focus on protecting civilians and supporting teammates. Setsuna, cure Passion. Share her knowledge of Labyrinth's technology and command structure. This would make the team feel much more organized than in the original series. Working with Setsuna, Reika and Setsuna would develop one of the strongest partnerships in the group. Both are calm under pressure, serious about their responsibilities, willing to sacrifice themselves if necessary, thoughtful before acting. During strategy sessions, they might naturally finish each other's thoughts. For example, Setsuna, the western sector has fewer surveillance units. Reika, then that is where Mobius expects the least resistance. Love would smile and say, "You two really think alike." Confronting the Labyrinth executives. By the final arc, the remaining Labyrinth officers would realize Reika is the team's strategist. Instead of trying to defeat Peach first, they might target Barry to disrupt the team's coordination. Reika would anticipate this. She'd deliberately draw enemy attention while calmly directing the others. For instance, Peach left flank, Pine defensive support, Passion now. Her composure under pressure would help prevent the chaos the villains hope to create. The battle with Mobius. Mobius believes perfect order is the highest ideal. Reika values order as well, but for a very different reason. This creates a fascinating ideological clash. Mobius might say, "Individual thought creates conflict. My system eliminates suffering." Reika would respond, "Order without freedom is not peace. It is merely silence." Unlike Love, whose argument is rooted in emotion and friendship, Reika would challenge Mobius's philosophy directly. Together, their perspectives would complement one another. Love argues that people grow through love and connection. Reika argues that true harmony requires freedom and personal choice. Mobius would find it difficult to dismiss either argument. Using the Barry sword. The Barry sword would likely become one of the team's most important weapons in the final battles. Reika would use it not as a flashy finisher, but as a precise tool to deflect powerful energy attacks, protect teammates, create openings for Peach and Passion to unleash finishing moves. Her disciplined swordsmanship would shine against Labyrinth's strongest creations. Team dynamics in the finale. The final team would have clearly defined roles. Love/Cure Peach. Emotional leader. Encourages everyone to keep believing. Reika/Cure Barry. Tactical leader. Makes split-second strategic decisions. Inori/Cure Pine. Defensive specialist. Keeps the team together through healing and support. Setsuna/Cure Passion. Insider knowledge of Labyrinth. Aggressive frontline fighter. Each cure contributes in a distinct way, making the group feel exceptionally balanced. The final victory. The climax would still revolve around defeating Mobius not simply through strength, but by proving that hearts cannot be controlled. After Mobius is defeated, Reika would quietly reflect on what they've accomplished. She might say, "A world without choice may seem peaceful, but peace only has meaning when it is freely chosen." Love would grin. "That's exactly why we'll keep protecting everyone's smiles." Setsuna would smile, realizing she now truly belongs with the team. Epilogue. After Labyrinth is freed, Reika would likely help rebuild relations between the two worlds. Given her diplomatic nature, she might help establish peaceful exchanges between Earth and Labyrinth, advise former Labyrinth citizens as they adjust to making their own choices, encourage education and cooperation rather than punishment for those who served Mobius. Setsuna would often work alongside her, helping former Labyrinth residents adapt to a life where they are free to make their own decisions. Overall, replacing Mickey with Reika wouldn't fundamentally change the ending of Fresh Pretty Cure. Love would still be the emotional heart of the story, and Setsuna's redemption would remain central. What would change is how the team reaches that ending. Reika would add a layer of careful planning, disciplined combat, and philosophical depth, making the final arc feel less like a desperate struggle and more like a coordinated effort to prove that freedom, compassion, and responsibility are stronger together than control imposed from above. Thanks for watching. Remember to sub and like. Bye, guys.